The most potent naval assets during the two global wars, German submarines wreaked havoc on transatlantic shipping, sinking over 8,000 merchant and combat ships and claiming numerous lives. These U-boats, short for Untersea boot, German for submarine, patrolled the seas hunting larger targets, assaulting them from both above and beneath the waves with their deck artillery and torpedoes. Within these cramped, dim submarines, sailors had no option to bathe or even swap out their clothing during voyages that spanned up to 2 months. A crew of 50 had access to just 2 lavatories, one which doubled up as food storage at voyage's commencement, that became inoperable when submerged deeper than 80 feet due to external water pressure, as outlined in the U-boats by Douglas Botting. The air inside the U-boats was a mix of bilge water, perspiration, and diesel exhaust. Their footwear grew mold, and even navigational maps deteriorated from the stifling humidity. German war journalist, Lothar Gunther Butschim, during a 1941 patrol, described the experience as being akin to Jonah trapped inside a colossal armored sea creature. While submarines were still rudimentary naval tools, Germany was the last of the major naval nations to commission one in 1906. Yet, by World War I's onset in 1914, Germany had leveled the playing field. Its fleet of 20 battle-ready U-boats surpassed the capabilities of other nations' submarines, boasting a 5,000-mile range without needing to refuel, enabling their operations along the entirety of the British shoreline. U-boats make their mark in World War I. On September 5, 1914, the U-boat Armada initiated its first assault by targeting a British light cruiser near the Scottish shores, leading to over 250 sailor fatalities. Just 17 days afterward, U-9 brought down 3 British battlecruisers within a span of an hour, resulting in almost 1,500 deaths. However, in the war's opening month, Germany's U-boat losses surpassed their conquests. By February 1915, Germany proclaimed the commencement of unrestrained submarine warfare. This decree allowed the targeting of all ships, including neutral country merchant vessels, without prior warning within a declared war perimeter encompassing Great Britain. The notion of submarines assaulting merchant vessels had been previously dismissed by various British officials, including the First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill, who once remarked, "Such actions are unlikely from a civilized nation." Beyond targeting supply vessels for Britain, U-boats also set their sights on passenger liners. A significant incident occurred on May 7, 1915, when U-20 fired upon the passenger ship Lusitania near the Irish coast, leading to the deaths of roughly 1,200 people, among whom were 128 Americans. Concerned about the possibility of drawing the U.S. into the conflict, Germany eventually committed to ensuring passenger safety before targeting non-militarized ships. Countering the U-boat menace, the Allied forces grappled with the challenge of the U-boat. The Royal Navy used camouflage techniques, disguising their warships to mimic merchant ships, and utilized haystacks to shield weaponry. British patrols even adopted strategies like carrying canvas sacks and tools, designed specifically to cloak and damage the lenses of U-boat periscopes. Following their declaration of unrestricted submarine warfare against both Allied and neutral vessels on January 31, 1917, U-boats had sunk over 500 ships by the close of April. Their efforts brought Britain close to defeat. However, U-boat strikes on U.S. merchant vessels significantly influenced America's decision to join the war. U-boat reaches American shores. The German invention of the U-cruiser allowed them to target the Atlantic front of their newfound adversary. America first witnessed the German U-boat's menace in May 1918 when one managed to sink 13 vessels, with 6 falling in just one day. This U-boat also planted mines in American harbors and severed 2 underwater telegraph lines during its extensive 12,000-mile patrol. The Allies, adopting a strategy of grouping merchant ships into escorted convoys, began to neutralize the U-boat threat. Despite these efforts, by the culmination of World War I, German submarines had annihilated over 10 million tons of cargo. The subsequent Treaty of Versailles mandated the handover of all U-boats and barred Germany from possessing them in the future. Yet, following Adolf Hitler's disavowal of the treaty in 1935, submarine production recommenced. The First Great War had showcased the potency of long-distance submarines, and as conflict reignited in 1939, so did the resurgence of the U-boats. U-boats challenged maritime dominance in World War II. As World War II broke out, Germany boasted a fleet of 57 submarines, led by Commodore Karl Donitz, a veteran of U-boat service in the First World War. Donitz held the conviction that victory in the Atlantic was crucial, and projected that with 300 U-boats, they could clinch the win. By May 1940, Hitler greenlit unrestricted submarine warfare encircling Great Britain, a move he'd previously resisted to sidestep antagonizing the US. With ports now secured in Norway and western France, the German U-boats expanded their territory, menacing merchant vessels. The submarines, operating in coordinated groups dubbed wolf packs by the British, tracked their prey persistently. From mid-1940 to early 1941, every U-boat in operation sunk around 8 merchant vessels monthly, a period Germany labeled the happy time. Though the British had instated a convoy mechanism as war ignited, its defense was lacking for the initial 18 months. Radar was in its infancy. Aircraft, scarce and limited in reach, couldn't offer nocturnal escorts. While the Allies struggled to track U-boat activities, Germany tapped into cables shared by American maritime insurers and their European counterparts, gaining insight into cargo details, sailing schedules, and routes. With the US joining the war, a fleet of 16 U-boats targeted merchant vessels along the American and Canadian coasts in Operation Drumbeat. Exploiting disarrayed and weak defenses, these submarines extended their reach to the Gulf of Mexico, patrolling inshore routes throughout the first 6 months of 1942. The U-boats that prowled the North Carolina shipping corridors claimed 78 merchant vessels, and took the lives of 1,200 merchant mariners. Once American trade vessels began traveling in trans-Atlantic groups with continuous naval and aerial protection, U-boat assaults dwindled significantly. Coupled with deciphering U-boat codes, advancements in radar, and successful attacks by long-range aircraft and escort carriers, 41 U-boats met their end in May 1943, with a staggering 8 sunk in a single day. In response, Donitz directed his submarines to shift to distant waters like the Indian Ocean, targeting vessels without escorts. In 1944, U-boats made a comeback near the British shoreline, facilitated by the introduction of snorkel vents, enabling prolonged and deeper underwater operations, thus minimizing radar and aerial detection. Yet, their success was limited and losses considerable. After Hitler's demise on April 30, 1945, Donitz, his successor, called for German troops to halt operations and capitulate. The 45 active U-boats surfaced and navigated to the port specified by the Allies. It's approximated that Germany saw a staggering 3/4 of its U-boats destroyed during World War II. While they wreaked havoc on Allied fleets during the 2 global wars, these U-boats also became underwater tombs for roughly 30,000 of the 40,000 sailors aboard.